everybody, and welcome to this episode of Bitz About Botz, where I have the distinct pleasure of interviewing industry experts around all things emerging technology. In the world of intelligent automation, there's been several acronyms that have flown up, most recently AI. And I am really excited to be here with one of our good friends and longtime WonderBotz partners, Harish. Harish, how are you today?
Hey, Paula, I'm doing great. How are you? It's great to talk to you on a Monday.
I know. You're definitely cheering up my day. Mondays do have the blues, but with you, it's going to be a good one. So thanks for agreeing to participate. For those who don't know you, why don't you give a little bit of a background of how it is that you got into this emerging technology space? I know today we want to focus on several of the different technologies that are up and coming, but most notably, what you and I know we've talked at length about is that technology is nothing if not managed or operated with human EQ, intelligence, and a little bit of upskill. So tell us a little bit about some of the certifications, some of the education. How did you get to this position of being a world-class COE leader in the intelligent automation space?
Thank you, Paula. Really excited to talk to you today. So a little bit about my background. I love problem solving. I've always been a problem solver. Even when I was a kid, I was one of those ones that really like to take things apart and then try to put them back together to see how it works. And I was a nightmare for my parents. But I think it really kind of fostered this thing about curiosity to not just make things better, but make things really, really good and awesome. So I specialize in bringing together people, process, data, and technology to elevate performance of companies, right? That's my sweet spot. Over the last, I want to say, almost 2 decades, that's what I've done mostly across manufacturing, across retail, across financial sectors. I started more from a perspective of business transformation using process improvement and process innovation. Grown through my career, I've definitely recognized the role of technology in creating breakthrough performance and innovation, and always had a fascination for technology. And I think it was about 5 to 6 years back, there's a lot of buzz around RPA, IPA. I thought this was a great opportunity to leverage that capability to solve business problems. I had a fantastic boss who believed in me, who said, hey, let's create a proof of concept, right? Let's see how this goes. And the proof of concept was, wildly successful. I had the opportunity to set up a team from the ground up. I was a team of 1, and in 4 years we were a team of 20, just doing process transformation using RPA and IPA, and we created, millions and millions in value by solving critical business problems. So it's been a fantastic journey, and really. It's been a fantastic learning experience as well.
So Harish, you said a lot of things that you and I know. We know these acronyms, we know this space. I think though sometimes, and often as a practitioner in this space, it occurs to me to stop and say, do we translate what we do enough, right? Because if you think about it, we both wound up in this intelligent automation space, but it's not like that was a curriculum in college or a master's in your university to go into, RPA and business transformation. So if you were looking at this perspective, if you were looking at little Harish or younger Harish or the up and coming generation that's entering the workforce, how would you explain to them how to navigate their way into finding love for problem solving and challenge solving and business processes? And how did you get that to translate to business transformation? What would you coach them on to sort of see between the words and acronyms?
Oh, that's a great question, right? I think a couple of things that stand out to me, and it's been a learning journey for me as well. Beyond the passion for problem solving, I think there's got to be a passion for learning, especially in this day and age. Attention spans are smaller, but the learning opportunities are so much. There's a chasm. But I think what's neat about the day and time that we live in is the tremendous opportunities for learning. I know when I was growing up, you had to go to school, you had a notebook, pen, paper. And look at the technology. I mean, you could learn from YouTube, right? You could go to WonderBotz and learn. You could go from UiPath, Blue Prism. Udemy. I mean, the choices and the formats are limitless. There are different ways by which people can consume information today. In my perspective, learning is a never-ending journey. You never cease to learn. And the people who want to learn, who stay on the continuous learning path, are the ones who typically end up succeeding.
Yes.
So that's, I think, really stands out to me. And then two, storytelling, Paula. I think this is really what you're hitting on, is how do you break down these terminologies, these concepts, in a way that people understand, in a way that people invite you in to help them solve the problems. And I think that's something team and I have worked on over the last many years. How do you actually make things simple and seamless? I had an awesome colleague on my team who loved analogies. And the way she would explain technology and business problems is through simple examples. And that really resonated with the audience. At the end of the day, when you talk about automation and AI, it's really about a spectrum of capabilities that try to mimic what we as humans do.
I think that's the most succinct way that's ever been summed. And it's not always the humanoid Sophia, right? It's not this concept of robots that are completely human that we're talking about here. And WonderBotz does a huge effort. We make a concerted effort every year to participate in activities that are about automation for good, right? Because we know that education factor never ends. So we hire the best and brightest, but also those with the most potential. Because if they don't have a curious, insatiable appetite for learning, they're never going to make it, because the next thing is knocking on our door 6 months later, 3 months later. And so it moves so quickly that I think it's so important to have, those different areas covered. And you're not going to learn it all. We're not going to consume it all. So it's important to find a methodology where you always stay current. And I think you've done that so well. So you started your career in emerging technology and business transformation, added the advent of RPA, which is probably about 15, 20 years old now in the way we understand it today, right? In its enterprise form, where we understand it today modularly. And over the last, I'd say about 5-10 years, we've had a few more acronyms come on the scenes, right? With digital readers like OCR and IDP. And for those listeners who don't know those translations, right? Optical character recognition, and IDP is intelligent document processing, right? Two different types, categories, if you will, of intelligent automation. And what we're trying to do in all of these areas, and what all the vendors of these softwares have been trying to do, is connect the dots between the tasks and work items that humans are supposed to do, and see where it is that we can layer in machine. And that's how I look at it, right? That's my simple way of looking at it, and how I simplify it for business leaders, is we're layering in technology where humans otherwise could have performed things, but probably a lot slower, less accurately, and far more costly is human capital than adding a technology. So the cream of the crop, the one everyone's talking about today, and I think we're honestly saturated by the news on every level of how AI is coming on the scenes. But we've been doing that from a different form, right? Harish, it was called machine learning only 5 years ago, where we were giving data to a machine and having it learn what it was that the predictive or prescriptive results could potentially be. What have you seen as far as operationalizing AI in the last 10 years of your career? Is it fact, fiction, myth? How far are we into this? And is the adoption really as ripe as all the analysts are having us believe?
I think you're spot on, right? There's a tremendous evolution, especially the last couple of years with generative AI. But I think you're also absolutely right that we as humans have been trying to build intelligent systems, machines, capabilities for a very, very long time. I even equate to even calculators and Excel had some level of programmed intelligence, right? Yes, though it was very rules-based, structured. For me, I think the way I would think about it, Paula, is going back to the human anatomy. I think about the brain as your AI, your digital workers as your hands, and your connective tissue or your nervous system as a process orchestration. Now, the goal is to go from unstructured data, what you see, what you hear, into a way where you can convert into a structured format so that your digital workers can actually go in and execute a series of steps. And the theme that I've used over the last few years is insights to action. And I think that the companies that really string them together well in a seamless way are the ones who are going to really, really get the benefit from these emerging capabilities. This has existed for a long time. I think about machine learning, NLP, NLG, right? Natural language processing, natural language generation, IDP. Whatever the case may be, I think somebody said it's as more traditional AI, and the latest is generative AI.
Yep.
And what's the big difference is generative AI can actually generate new content.
Yes.
The technology is fascinating. Ultimately, it comes down to what business problems are we trying to solve?
Well, and at the end of the day, the adoption is going to be what value is this going to bring? It's still about, you don't just implant unless you're, Nick Tesla. You don't just fly something experimentally and spend money on something to find out what the result is in a tertiary way. Most people need to have an objective problem that they're trying to solve. And then you apply the technology objectively to it, right? And all this is really done in the world of software is given us a little bit more to work with, another arrow in our quiver to enhance what we were already laying the foundation for with traditional, what I call traditional automation, which is the RPA. And hell, even go back to macros, right? You touched on it. Mm-hmm. Excel is a form of automation. Is it intelligent? I don't think so, but it is a form of automation if you get the macros right. And that was really running business processes for a long time. So I love that you said that evolution, Harish. And the other thing that I always was fascinated by in your problem solving and your kind of looking back at how things work, once you were sort of established that that you found kind of this emerging tech, this is a place for you to lead and an opportunity for you to grow and continue learning. You never get to stop learning in our industry. We know that. I have a million tabs open at all times, and I still don't think I can keep up with all of the latest and greatest in our industry. But now that you've sort of found your niche, how else do you go about learning? Where do you consume new data now that you've gotten your certifications and you've been doing a lot of that learning? How do you advise the next generation to consume the data of tomorrow?
I think one that stands out to me is through networking and talking to people. I know we were at Blue Prism Live maybe a month back. It was really powerful for me to just sit back and hear about all the different ways people are bringing this capability to life, and just talking to those professionals, to those innovators. I think that was really eye-opening for me. And then obviously partnering with industry experts like yourself and other folks who are at the cutting edge of this capability. So I think beyond self-learning, beyond the academies, there are so many different ways you can get it. I'll tell you what, when I go to Facebook, the number of ads that I see about different universities offering some kind of certification or program that's grown exponentially. I think it's at the end of the day, it's what skills do you want to develop? How much time do you want to spend on it? How much money do you want to spend on it? How can you get that quickly? So this generation is just very, very fortunate in the sense that there are many ways to consume information and get better.
Yes, and sometimes it can be a bit of a system overload, right? Of way too much information. But I think it's truly important to note that having knowledge about what's going on is key, and that once you get your diploma or your certification, it ain't over if you want to stay competitive. I mean, people consider me an expert and I laugh because I have to, keep all of my tabs open, my notifications from Google, the latest and greatest. What is Altman doing today? What's the future of Google tomorrow? All of those pressing, timely factors, matter in what it is that we're doing. Not to mention the impact that some of this technology can have on organizations and frankly, the economy. If applied right, it's important to stay abreast of all of the macro factors and what's going on in the world as well. It contributes tremendously to things like supply chain, financial operations, different ways in which we conduct businesses and the way that governance is had. So you were a very, very up and coming supply chain kind of renegade. And one of the things that I loved about some of the ideas that you had of optimization is it was not only about supply chain and how to optimize that, but it was about e-commerce connecting with traditional supply chain. So a very new age way of consumers buying and selling goods, and a new way of optimizing something that dates back to the beginning of human trade, which is supply chain as we know it today. So tell me a little bit about how you came up with some of the ideas and some of the innovative ways to find value within supply chain, something that's so old school, but we've had to modernize it along the way. I think it's fascinating.
That's a fantastic question. First thing I would say is I was fortunate enough to be surrounded by a team that was really, really awesome at what they did. People with various diverse backgrounds, people who are smarter than me. So that actually made finding problems and solving problems a lot easier. But one of the fundamental philosophies for me in terms of automation is what I call as value stream automation. I know generally when you start a proof of concept or a year in, you're starting within a function, you're looking at business problems within a function. Say finance, say HR, your merchandising organization, or your supply chain, how you sell. I think those are good. That gets you good wins. But one of the things that we've done really, really well is follow something horizontally across the value stream. Meaning, if you want to follow a customer journey and say, hey, how do they buy products? What are their pain points, right? How does that translate into employees being able to help our customers? And how does that intersect with the product journey? Now, if you're able to do that and do that value stream approach, I think that's where you're going to unlock tremendous amount of value, right? Because you're not creating islands of value in a sea of waste. You're actually solving the big problems. And I think that's where intelligent automation, AI, can really come in, because it helps with the end-to-end automation. The more end-to-end you go, you minimize human touch, right? I've never been a fan of having human intervention in the middle of an automation because it creates bottlenecks. The reason you have human in the middle of an automation is because you don't have an end-to-end automation, or you don't trust the automation enough. Either are not good places to be. So long story to your question, but I think it's really about understanding your business, surrounding yourself with great people, and just following your value streams from beginning to end, and then figuring out where there's actually the juice for the squeeze. You can't solve everything. There's got to be some element of prioritization.
I completely agree. One of the things that we're seeing more and more in the market in general is that a lot of organizations that were early adopters of intelligent automation or RPA or whatever its nascent form is, but this umbrella of process optimization tools, the early adopters are now getting to the place where, in order to free up our resources and or budget allocation towards generative AI, some of these C-suite initiatives that are coming from the board down is to either hand over our programs to a managed service capacity to keep the lights running, or reimagining the way that the work is being done once again. So how do you suppose that as these technologies come in, it can't be like an Etch-a-Sketch where we shake it and start over every time? So what would you advise the business leaders of tomorrow looking to optimize on staying relevant and not having to go into technical debt by having to scrap each program or project, however you want to look at it, that they do in favor of the next emerging technology or the next thing that the C-suite is going to be pushing from the top down? How do you mitigate that risk? Because it seems to me that if you're evaluating a technology, that's something that you have to think through. It comes up on RFPs for us all the time. How long is this going to last? But how do we educate everybody to understand that RPA, some of these traditional automation tools, was simply the foundation for what we're seeing today? How would you comment on that, Harish? I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Great segue, Paula. When you think about one of the key benefits of any automation, intelligent automation, you need to develop SOPs or processes. But in most cases, at least in some of the use cases that I've developed, SOPs did not exist. A current state did not exist. Yes. And what automation did is actually gave you a view of how the automation should work, right? So it gives you a great jumping off point. Now, one of the reasons I bring that up is now you have a foundation, take something from good to great. And not every single business process needs to be reimagined. What are the capabilities that is actually going to make a difference from a customer experience perspective, from an associate experience perspective, right? What's actually truly going to move the needle from a top and a bottom line? You need to have a clear vision and be able to tie your pain points to that vision to figure out what are some automations you can actually keep access versus what you want to truly start greenfield or blue sky. I don't think there's a magic answer to this. It's going to be on a case by case basis. But I do think that if there are disparate automations running, if there's a way for you to connect them together through AI, I think that's going to unlock significant value versus trying to focus on a silo.
I totally agree. I think it's about connecting the dots within the processes of the organization, like it's always been. When it was just Visio diagrams before the robots actually did it, I think it's about connecting the dots of the actions, the tasks, and the outcomes. And then whichever technology makes the most sense to get that done, or if you can even with technology find a shortcut, because they don't have to pivot table, they don't have to check their math, they don't have to kind of look at what they did in the past, then that's even better. So I totally agree with you. I think it's about embracing it and understanding where it can be applied versus, trying to do a wholesale adopt the technology for the feature, because that's going to be a winning recipe for disaster.
Here's the reality of things. Most of the enterprise vendors, right, ERP systems, they're incorporating some element of AI within that package. Then the question becomes, how much do you want to use that capabilities versus how much do you want to build in-house? And then, if there are obviously disparate systems and processes, how do you actually connect them together, which brings you to intelligent process automation? Now, the options are limitless. I think what I would advise people based on my experience is always focus on the value. And then always try to figure out what the easiest and seamless way is to get to the value versus getting caught up in tools, capabilities, and terminology.
I totally agree. I think that's exactly right. So instead of deciphering Rosetta's stone of endless acronyms in our intelligent automation soup, it's about understanding what the outcomes can be that can be achieved and finding the value there.
I've been guilty of that, right? I've used terminologies left, right, center, but my team members always remind me it's about adding value. It's about solving business problems. So try to ground myself in the reality of things.
No, I totally agree. Well, Harish, this has been so informative. And I think for a lot of folks who maybe haven't been in this industry, maybe haven't thought of this as a career path, now have a little bit of an idea that this AI concept isn't so nebulous. It's not only for data engineers, data scientists, that really process improvement specialists through to operations leaders can really latch on to these concepts and begin to apply them to their organizations and begin to be the renegades of adoption, because that's what we need in this world, right? Is those early adopters. I thank you so much for your time, your wisdom, and your expertise. Is there anything else that you'd like to impart on our audience before we call it a day on this episode?
The one thing that really resonates with me, somebody said, our role as problem solvers and innovators is to take the bot out of the human so we can focus on higher value added activities. I think that's what we're all in this profession trying to do, is make things faster, better, cheaper, so that we can focus on things that truly matter. So
Exactly.
I'll kind of leave it at that.
I totally agree. Let's free up our mundane stuff. Leave that to the robots so that we can go back to being beautifully human, right? Because that after all is the name of the game. Thanks so much, Harish, and everybody tune in to our next episode of Bitz About Botz. Subscribe to the WonderBotz channel, and you can always hear the latest and greatest of cutting edge technology and what's next on the docket for intelligent automation. Thank you.
Thank you, Paula.